In today's video, we're going to talk about how to memorize your bar exam outlines. First things first, our first tip is that whatever outline you're starting with, let's say torts, for instance, you should not sit down and expect to be able to memorize that whole outline in one sitting. That's incredibly overwhelming. And more likely than not something that the average bar examinee can accomplish in one sitting. So obviously that's frustrating and setting yourself up for possibly not completing that task, which again is not a good way to prepare for the bar exam. So let's say you're starting with torts and you need to memorize your torts outline. Our first tip is to chunk your outline, so to speak. So let's say you start with negligence. That's way better than trying to memorize the whole outline at once. So by chunking your outline and first focusing on negligence, this is a more manageable task. Then, once you've decided how you are chunking that outline and you are starting with that first issue, say, negligence, further break it up. Analyze it or memorize it by breaking it up into its applicable elements, like duty, breach, both types of causations, and harm. Again, this will further make the memorization task easier by breaking it up into these more manageable parts. So once you've done that, what next? Our next tip is something that a lot of people struggle with, and this is kind of the heavy lifting of bar prep or memorization, so to speak. So if you are trying to memorize negligence and you're starting with duty as your first chunk in which you're tackling, try to figure out which type of memorization technique works best for you. What we find helps most students, because most people are visual learners, is that they will take a look at their outline and they'll read everything they need to know about duty. And then what they'll do is they'll cover up portions of that outline or maybe the whole piece of duty and try to rewrite the rule and everything that they need to know about it. And they will basically do this over and over and over again until they can write down everything as it relates to duty without looking at their outline. And obviously this is a process. You're not going to be able to read it once and then write down the applicable rule perfectly immediately thereafter. It's something that you'll have to work at and do over and over and over again. Other people who don't like that method, or maybe it doesn't work great for them, they will read whatever they are attempting to memorize out loud, and they will just repeat those elements over and over and over again. So that way they do this until they have it memorized. Other students like to make up charts or diagrams if that helps them. Some people make up mnemonics for certain areas of the law. Some people like to make up quizzes and quiz themselves, or they have other people quiz them. Finally, we get a lot of questions about flashcards. Flashcards could be an excellent memorization tool if you use them correctly. Some people find that using flashcards for certain areas of the law, for instance, like the elements for intentional torts or the hearsay exceptions, really help them. And that's great. If that works for you, that is a technique that you could utilize here. However, our caution is that you should not try to put down every single aspect of every outline to a note card, because that's a huge task, and chances of you memorizing all of those are slim, and it's going to be very time consuming for you to get through all of that. So again, just to be clear here, if you are going to use flashcards, you should pick and choose what you're using them for instead of trying to commit a whole outline to flashcards. So once you've chunked your outline and you've decided where you're going to start, and you are writing and rewriting the outline, or saying it out loud, or creating your charts, or quizzing yourself, whatever sort of memorization technique that you've decided to utilize, you basically should do that over and over and over again until it's time to move on to the next section of your outline. So let's say you started with duty. Once you've done that, move over to breach. Once you've completed that task with breach, do that with causation, so on and so forth. The other big tip we have for you is that while you're doing this and you're in the process of memorization, you should be sure to take breaks. Maybe take a break between each chunk of your outline, depending on how you've chunked it. My good rule of thumb is every 45 minutes. It's a good time to take a quick break. But be sure it's a quick break. This is not a time to, maybe watch a movie. That would be a really long break and obviously break up your study day, and you probably wouldn't accomplish a ton. But instead, go for a quick walk or, eat a snack, just something to give your brain a rest. Breaks are very, very important. Then once you've done this and you've chunked your outline and you reviewed all the chunks and you're taking your breaks, be sure to review the whole outline over again. This is obviously a task. You're not going to sit down to review that outline and just magically know everything all of a sudden. Of course not. But you will find that for certain areas and certain rules that you're able to move through it more quickly than you were the first time. And this is excellent. That is in fact progress, and that is what we're striving for. Then you have to put the outline away. This is the hardest part for most people in bar prep. If they do get into a good routine of memorization, they feel like they can't stop. They feel like they don't have it memorized and they just have to keep at it until they do. But the reality is you have so much to do during bar prep. You have to practice. You should be moving on to, say, multiple choice prep and essay prep. There's other subjects that you probably need to look at and to memorize as well. So be sure that you are moving on and you're not sitting on one topic for too long, because that's a good way to get behind. So once you put that outline away and you move on to your next task, the next tip that we have for you is that you need to be sure that you pick back up that torts outline and you review it again. Get a good night's sleep, and the next day review the whole thing. And you should do this maybe every day that week that you are tackling torts, or if you can't fit it in every day that week, try to get it in every other day, or at least a few times that week. Again, repetition is very, very important here, and by focusing on, say, torts and your memorization of torts for 1 week at a time, and again, looking at it every day or every few days is really going to help you accomplish this task and having that long-term memory so that you can perform on the bar exam and to be able to recall all of this information that you are attempting to memorize. The other thing I mentioned is sleep. Sleep is so magical when it comes time to create memory and therefore memorization. A lot of people, let sleep go out the window while they're preparing for the bar exam, and they try to pull all-nighters or they just get very little sleep. And that's not helpful. That's very counterproductive. Sleep is very important for you to create memory and memorization. So be sure that you are getting a good night's sleep. And then finally, our last tip is consistency. As I stated, if you're tackling torts 1 week, the more you can look at that outline over and over again, the better. But you're not done with torts when that week is over. Though your bar prep schedule might have you moving on to the next MBE topic, that's great, and you should stick to that schedule. But you have to be sure that you come back and you review those previous topics that you've spent all that time memorizing. Again, consistency is key. You're not going to be able to memorize or review, I should say, every outline every day, and I understand that. But at least once a week, you should be picking up those previous topics and going back through them and quizzing yourself and revisiting those areas that you know you struggle with. And you will find that over time, this gets a little bit quicker and quicker and quicker. Again, that is progress, which is what we're striving for here when it comes to memorization and the bar exam. So those are all of the tips I have for you on how to memorize your bar exam outlines, and we hope that you found them helpful.